Colourblindness.
You guys are coming up on like 14 years. How do you think the landscape of metalcore composition has changed since like 2010? Introduction of like EDM, synth elements, things like that. Do you think that that's like been fairly rapid recently, or has it been an evolution?
Yeah, I definitely think metalcore right now is kind of at like its most creative peak that it's ever been. There's like, it's more acceptable to blend different things than it ever has been, at least in my opinion. And as far as like production goes, I feel like it's just the most elevated it's ever been, because that's like, I mean, you can only play so many guitar riffs and things like that, so it's kind of like you almost have to rely a little bit more on production to make things sound more unique and stuff like that, which is cool. I'm all for that. I'm a big production guy, but yeah, I think it's cool. I think we're at a good place right now for sure.
I say this a lot on my channel, but I feel like sometimes genre can be like the death of creativity, because you end up with a whole bunch of bands coming up through the scene who are trying to sound like the people around them, and that's their like level of success, right?
Totally.
But then you get some bands like yourselves who kind of tend to push through that glass ceiling, so to speak, and just, you know, become more creative and have more creativity and scope, and sort of tend to push the genre forward rather than let it stagnate. That's, really interesting. So your career predates The Plot and You. When you started out, what were your influences? What inspired you then? And what do you sort of look to compositionally now as like inspiration?
Starting out, some of the first bands I listened to were like Under Oath, Taking Back Sunday, Jimmy Eat World, Saves, and stuff like that. And then, like, these days though, I typically listen to mostly pop and like a lot of kind of obscure indie pop type stuff. Like this artist Seb DeLisa, this girl, what's her name? Blanking. But just like a bunch of like European pop artists and stuff like that that just are doing like really bizarre things production wise. I'm just that's almost all I care about anymore. I love a good, clean, like forward production, you know what I mean? Something that's just like inspiring.
Yeah, something that's got dynamics and creativity and passion behind it.
Yeah, and sound design.
And new things you haven't heard. Yeah.
Sound design that just sounds like, you know, something you haven't heard before. You know what I mean? Like really, really big into sound design these days. I think that's probably the thing I look for the most in things that I'm like, I want to listen to. So like, I do music for a living, so I typically don't listen to music that often, honestly.
Fair.
Anytime I get a chance to like get away from it, I try to just be in silence. But
it's interesting. Like I heard recently somebody was saying that like what tends to grab people's attention in songs is when, you know, like if you're expecting it to go right and it zigs left, and it actually gives you a dopamine hit. And so that's what people like when the song really blows you away. It's usually because there's little pops of surprise and things that, you know, and I think a lot of those sort of top tier sort of melodic sort of metalcore bands are really covering that right now with, you know, a lot of sampling and synth parts and, you know, not repeating a phrase twice in each chorus, doing like a variant on things and really switching it up.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about that the other day. It's almost like it shifted from being like the catchiest choruses, like people, that's not really the biggest focus anymore. It's more about just like having a big moment that, you know what I mean, that people are excited about.
Do you think, I know this is probably a swear word for a lot of people, but do you think like the concept of the breakdown is kind of dead, or it's moving? I'm noticing a lot of sort of top end bands are kind of like, we're exploring other options now rather than shoehorning a breakdown in for the sake of it. Maybe there's other directions we can go, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're gonna go for a big moment like that, like a breakdown or something, you really have to do something crazy for it to like stand out.
It's all been said now.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, there's only so many things you can do with a guitar, bass and drums, you know what I mean? So pretty much everything at this point has been done. So it's like, yeah, everyone's just trying as hard as they can to make weird sounds with their mouth and, you know what I mean, just do crazy shit, which is cool. I mean, at least people are being innovative and trying to figure out ways to grab people, but...
Yeah, I mean, there's so many bands out there right now that you could put a playlist on and I think it was an album.
Yeah.
There's so many bands that sound the same. But then that's why, you know, that's why I think a lot of these bands are sort of moving to the top, is because people are going, oh, this is something different and new, right? It's within genre, but it's like, I haven't heard this shit before, you know?
Right.
Dispose has some really moody tracks. I feel like it feels a little bit like a new direction. Feel Nothing is spectacular. It sounds really huge.
Appreciate it.
It's beautifully melodic. Tell me about the production behind that.
So that record was the first one, the first record ever where we went to a producer to work with. And so him and I collabed a lot on like the production elements on that. His name's Drew Folk. He's really talented. He like really inspired me to kind of think outside of the box and like experiment more like outside of the genre, and even like put me onto some artists that he thought would be kind of like inspiring for the album. But yeah, that one we just had tons of fun with it. I think our approach was like, let's do too much and then take it back. like
throw everything at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Go tasteful.
Yeah, and then once vocals are in, like kind of cater the production to the vocal. And now I'm kind of like doing almost opposite that. I'm like focusing on the vocal and the emotion, and then the production builds around that, like tailor it to that. So but he's like he's a very creative, like just bizarre person. So
how was it handing over the reins though? Like, I mean, I know that it's a collaboration, right? But like, I often ask this question is like, what, you know, particularly with newer bands, I'm like, okay, so what was it like when if you've done a lot of work yourselves and then you move in with a producer, now it's an extra member of the band with opinions and things like that, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Did you find struggling with that, or did you find it was actually a weight off because it's less you've got to worry yourself about? Or
I think it was a little bit of both. I think at first I was like really hesitant because I'm like very like possessive over my art and stuff like that. But as soon as like we got into it and like I started examining the way he does things and the way he thinks of things, I started like building a trust for him more. And
also their previous work probably matters as well. If you hear a lot of stuff that they've done that you go, that works.
Totally. And he's also very cool about like if I wasn't liking something, he was never married to anything, and we could easily just delete whatever, and nobody was
more of like an advisor on the sidelines giving you tips. Ideas.
But it definitely was nice having help, and like again, like he's a different person. He hears things different, and he has different ideas. So yeah, it was definitely cool to have a different perspective. We haven't gone back to him since, but I feel like I learned a lot from him, and like we're still really close and stuff. But
that seems to be a pretty common story actually. You get like people saying, we worked with this producer, we learned so much, and now we've taken that on board moving forward. And just whatever kind of worked for our process, it's altered that slightly, and we just keep pushing forward.
I think I've just over the last few years have been kind of like refining my process on things, and I don't know, I feel like I would rather just try things for a long time and just a bunch of trial and error than like put that weight on somebody else and like have to like tell them
figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So I take my time with it now.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
The newer singles are also fairly musically diverse. Left Behind in particular is extremely melodic. It's like, dare I say, like poppy, right?
Yeah.
So, and you sort of covered that earlier, being that a lot of your influence now is sort of pop music and more alt pop and things like that. Is this something you always had in you, or is this something, did anything specifically shape this transition, or was it just like you're just kind of feeling a little bit more creative freedom to draw from more influence?
Yeah, I think Dispose was probably a good indicator that we could pretty much get away with anything as far as like doing softer stuff, because there's a couple softer songs on that. But with the newer stuff though, I was just like, I don't care what it sounds like anymore. If I like it, that's all that matters. So yeah, that's pretty much just the approach these days. I'm not following any rules or anything. You know what I mean? Like,
you feel like basically you got nothing to prove anymore. You're just happy to just do what you want to do.
I guess I just like I feel a sense of comfort with our fans as far as like they just know to expect whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're not like they're very open-minded and cool with whatever we want to try for the most part. But anytime we like put out a heavy song, they're like, they're back to heavy. It's like we never stop. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
It's just more a diverse range now,
Yeah, for sure.
Forgotten is still definitely brutal. It has so many cool textural elements. What's your writing flow? Like, where do you start? Do you start with like a beat, or to throw some riffs together? I mean, I guess it probably depends on the song you're doing, I suppose. But if you, like, say you're sitting there with a fresh project and you're like, got to write a song, what's your first go-to? Like, what do you sort of start with?
It's kind of different every time. For the very last record that we did, it was almost always like I'd start with just a sample that I liked, and I would kind of like build around that. Sometimes I'll have just like a vocal melody or something, and I'll kind of build it around that. But typically I'm just messing around on a guitar. One tiny thing will inspire something, and then I just kind of build off of that. But again, it is different every time. I typically do like to write around like one cool production piece, like even just a chord progression, like on a piano or synth, something that just like invokes a feeling or something, and then just kind of build it around that. But yeah,
it makes sense.
But that song was actually the first song I ever wrote like on the road, which was cool because we're on tour and we're back in a van for like 2 weeks, and I was just so miserable. So like I got to do something. So that song was birthed through.
Okay, so again, you sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, but how have you found the audience responded to you sort of coming out with more diverse stuff? Were people hesitant at first? Do you think the community is becoming more open-minded to sort of more outside the genre influence, pulling into their sort of metalcore and deathcore and stuff like that? Or do you think it's attracting a wider audience that's a little bit like more accessible music?
I think heavy music is like finally starting to break into more of the mainstream. You know what I mean? Like you're seeing Ed Sheeran and Bring Me doing things like Billie Eilish is watching Knocked Loose at festival. You know what I mean? Like I think those worlds are finally merging to some degree, and I think I can see it even going further and further. Which I think is awesome. But yeah, it was weird with the new songs. I kind of expected like. Everything that happened was so backwards from what I expected. I thought Divide would be the biggest song, Left Behind would be the second, and then Forgotten would be the least favorite, but it was literally the exact opposite. Everyone loved the heavy song. Not many people cared that much about Divide, and then Left Behind still did well, but I didn't expect, the popularity.
So the audience is still surprising you with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very unpredictable. So, I mean, I'm definitely excited that we can experiment more in the heavy world now, though. I can feel comfortable with that again. But because that's like writing heavy music that's not boring and lame is kind of hard. So I like the challenge. Yeah.
Okay, so your music videos, as you can see, that's they've also always been extremely visceral, particularly lately. How closely are you involved in the production or creativity behind, the visual aspect of the band?
Almost none at all. Yeah, we found a video guy. His name's George. I think he lives in Brazil. I could be fucking that up, but he's just a creative genius. And so we gave him a couple ideas for the Divide music video, and it turned out so awesome. We're just like, dude, moving forward, we don't even want to give you ideas. Just do whatever you think is going to be cool. Kind of like, I don't know. Just wanted to give him.
He definitely has a visual canvas, right? There's a flavor to his videos.
Yeah. So we pretty much just gave him all creative control moving forward. It's just like, dude, whatever you want to do, just have fun with it. Because I feel like once you start getting a little too like nitpicky about art, especially something that someone else is making for you, it just kind of like de-incentivizes them. So
it sucks the creativity out of everything they're doing. If you keep giving him notes.
Right. I trust him, and luckily he's moving forward. He's our guy for the foreseeable future. So
that's fantastic because the videos look amazing.
Yeah, really dude. Every time I clicked the video for the first time, like, what the fuck am I in for? This is insane. Yeah.
That's awesome. Good. Yeah, it's good to be able to sort of trust in somebody to be able to put something that's so important in their hands and know that they're going to deliver.
We're so hands-on with everything else as far as our band goes. It's kind of nice to have someone that we can just be like, dude, take over. Like we don't care. Have full reign.
Well, like you said, like even this late in the piece, you started working with a producer. Everything else prior to that was kind of you sort of figuring it out. Do you offload the mixing and stuff like that, or do you?
That's the one thing that we started. I mixed Swan Song, the record before off these singles, and after that I was just like, it's too much like for me to just take all of that, and like by the time I got to mixing that, I was just so like hyper fixated on stupid shit that didn't matter that I overthought everything, and so I was like, moving forward I need to find someone that I really trust to do that. And I heard the new Limp Bizkit record. I was like, who mixed this? This sounds insane. And I found out it was Zach Cervini. He does like Bring Me, Architects, all those Bad Omens. I was like, damn, this is like next level shit. So we hit him up and it worked out. Yeah, he's been doing everything ever since, and he's doing everything for the foreseeable future. So
excellent, outstanding. Awesome. Thanks again, man. You've been really gracious with your time. I appreciate it. Great chat and great music, man.
Thank you so much.
Looking forward to hearing what's next.